None of them said anything when I walked in. 14 cubs, fresh from selection, and not one of them had the composure to look me in the eye. They were staring at the floor, or at the wall, or at their own hands. Anywhere that wasn't the observation window still had the human's blood on it from where the splatter had reached the glass in chamber 3. I let them sit with it for a moment. Then I pulled a chair to the front of the room, turned it backward, and sat down. "Tell me what you saw," I said. Silence. Pruvak, the biggest of them, always the first to talk, said he didn't stop. "No," I said. "He didn't. I've been running live threat assessments for 11 years on this station. In that time I've put Duraki soldiers through the corridor, Ethrani shock troops, twice a Velish pack unit that nearly took out the east bulkhead. I've watched every known species hit the stress threshold we build into Chamber 3, the stagger burst, a non-lethal pressure weapon, calibrated to produce a clean laceration across the forward limb and a secondary impact bruise along the ribline. Every species staggers. Every species pauses. The Hethrani, who have a documented pain tolerance 2.5 times ours, sat down on the floor of Chamber 3 and required 4 minutes to re-engage. The human had reached Chamber 4 before the blood reached his boot. His name was Harlan Voss. He'd been contracted to our station for 8 months as a systems technician, hull maintenance, mostly, the kind of work that requires patience and a tolerance for vacuum-adjacent cold. He was not a soldier. He had told me this himself, the morning I briefed him on the exercise parameters. In the flat, unhurried tone that humans use for everything, whether they're describing a work order or a structural failure. He'd looked at the corridor schematic, 2 clarifying questions about the objective markers, and said he'd do it. I had not told him about Chamber 3. I watched it on the monitor with the cubs arranged behind me in the observation bay, 14 sets of eyes on the glass. Voss moved through the first 2 chambers without incident, methodical, unhurried, clearing each quadrant before advancing, the kind of movement that suggested either training he hadn't mentioned or a very specific quality of attention. In Chamber 2, he encountered the first simulated contact, a pressure release that produced a flash and a concussive thud, enough to send most subjects stumbling backward. Voss stepped to the side, used the wall, and kept moving. Pruvak made a sound behind me. I didn't turn around. Chamber 3. The stagger burst fires from the upper left node. At the moment a subject's forward limb crosses the pressure, the laceration is predictable. A clean line, 8 to 12 centimeters, across the outer surface of whatever limb triggers the plate. Voss, it was his right arm. The secondary impact caught him in the ribs on the same side. I heard it from the observation bay. A wet, heavy sound. He stumbled, 1 step sideways, left foot catching him before his knee went down. The blood came immediately, the way it does with that particular weapon, fast and dark against his gray worksuit sleeve. I heard one of the cubs exhale. Voss stood straight. He looked at his arm, not the way a wounded creature looks at a wound, not with fear, not with the particular stillness that precedes shutdown, but the way a technician looks at a faulty connection, assessing, cataloging, deciding. He reached across with his left hand and pressed the fabric of his sleeve against the laceration with 2 fingers, applying pressure without breaking his visual sweep of the chamber. He did not stop moving. He cleared Chamber 3 in 40 seconds. Objective marker tagged. He moved to the threshold of Chamber 4, paused there for 8 seconds, the only pause, and then stepped through. Behind me, one of the cubs said, Is the exercise still running?" "Yes," I said. "But the wound is not a stopping condition," I said. "Him," he finished. All 5 chambers. 2 more connects in Chambers 4 and 5. Neither drew blood. Both would have ended a Duraki subject's run. Voss absorbed them, adjusted his angle of approach each time, tapped the final marker, the far marker at the far end of the corridor with his left hand, because his right had gone stiff around the elbow. He stood at the end of the corridor, for a moment, breathing harder than he had at the start. Then he turned around and walked back toward the debrief entrance at the same pace he'd entered. When he came through the door to the debrief chamber, the cubs saw the arm up close for the first time. Pruvak made a different sound than before. Voss looked at him with the mild curiosity of a man who cannot quite account for someone else's distress. "Good exercise," Voss said. He meant it as a compliment. I sent him to the medical bay. Then I sat down with the cubs. Now I looked at them. All 14 faces, their young faces doing the work of processing something that didn't fit the frameworks they'd arrived with, was still staring at the observation window. The blood on the glass had begun to dry at the edges. "You're going to serve alongside humans," I said. "Some of you already have, in transit, in joint operations. You think you understand them. You've read the briefings. Strength indices, flex scores, atmospheric tolerances." I paused. "The briefings are wrong. They are incomplete." I let that sit. "What the briefings don't carry," I said, "is this. A human in the middle of a task does not experience injury as a stopping condition. They experience it as a variable. They note it. They adjust for it. They continue." I looked at Pruvak. Voss knew he was bleeding. He wasn't unaware of it. He assessed the wound, determined it was not immediately fatal, applied what pressure he could manage without slowing his hands, and filed the rest under problems to solve when the task was finished. I leaned forward. "That is not bravado. It is not performance. It is simply how they prioritize." No one spoke. "When you are in the field beside a human and they take a wound," I said, "do not wait for them to stop. Do not expect the pause that tells you a unit is degraded. Do not look for the behavioral signal that a soldier is out of the fight. You will miss the rest of the engagement waiting for a signal that isn't coming." I stood up, turned the chair back around. "Treat the wound yourself, if you can reach them. Otherwise, stay out of their way and let them finish." I walked to the door. Behind me, one of the younger cubs, I didn't catch which one, said quietly, almost to herself, "He thanked us for it." "Yes," I said, without turning around. "He did. I've never found a satisfying way to explain that part. The closest I've come in 11 years is this. Shh. Humans seem to draw a clean line between the thing that hurt them and the people standing nearby when it happened. They don't hold the two together the way we do. It makes them, in certain situations, the most reliable unit in a corridor. It also makes them, if you're not ready for it, the most unsettling thing you will ever watch work." Voss was back at his hull maintenance rotation the following morning. He sent me a message that afternoon, short, practical, asking if I had any more exercises that needed a contractor. He said he'd enjoyed it. Proved the request.